You're listening to NT Paranormal After Dark. Nothing normal about it.
Greetings, folks. Welcome back to NT Paranormal After Dark podcast. I'm Ashton Rogers, and this is Sarah Hatfield with us.
Hi.
You can't see her on the screen yet. But happy Friday the 13th to everybody. Big paranormal day, I guess. I don't know. I saw a few people in some of the paranormal boards, talking about, ooh, it's Friday the 13th, it's a good night to go out ghost hunting and paranormal investigation and all that. And I was trying to figure out what the significance was to the paranormal. It was like, not really that I could find.
Just as a side note, Amelia says your old intro was really freaking terrible, and he hated it, and this one is slightly better.
I like the old. I have an affection for the old one
Amelia
with the still shot.
The other one was shit.
I don't think it was. Hey, talking to your mic a little bit.
I'm talking in my mic.
Oh, you know what?
They're turning up the wrong mic.
Yep.
No, I didn't say...
You switched spots.
I didn't say the old intro was shit. Emilio did. Read his comment. He says, the old intro was terrible. God, Ashton, how do you suck so bad?
I don't see that comment anywhere.
Oh, is that just coming up on my feed? Sorry. Okay. Back to Friday the 13th.
I'm about to revoke that top fan status he's got right there. No, I saw a bunch of people talking about Friday the 13th. I guess there's a few events that happen every year, every quarter, or whatever, that are associated with the paranormal world. So that like one of them's full moon, Halloween, 3 a.m. witching hour, 12 a.m. Things like that. And Friday the 13th came up. So I looked up a little bit on. Do you even know where the Friday the 13th thing even came from?
I don't know, but Emilio says I misinterpreted what he was saying, and that's not. That was a literal translation of what you were thinking when you wrote that comment, because I'm psychic.
What the hell? Wow, that's some misinterpretation.
Wasn't Friday the 13th didn't have to do some mythology back in the day?
Yeah,
according to Facebook
I think
memes,
Jason Voorhees rose from the grave to kill campers.
According to Facebook memes, it had something to do with Norse religions.
Okay.
I don't hate you, Emilio. I'm on your same wavelength, and I'm just telling Ashton what you really feel.
I hate you. I hate you very much. I hate you both.
I like Emilio better than I like you.
Okay, so what was the thing? What was the thing on Norse mythology? I missed that one.
It's a meme.
That showed up nowhere in any...
It's a meme going around on Facebook.
Oh, you know
so
how
I don't
accurate
know. I have
those
to
are.
find it, but
Those
it's talking
are
about how
super
it was Freya's day, like my cat, Freya.
Okay.
The goddess.
That
Christianity, when they were writing out paganism, turned that into a negative thing.
Well,
but
maybe it got combined, like all Christianity stuff, where it's just like a mix of paganism. Because one of the things I read,
Julie says she knows where it came from. Well, where did it come from then, Julie?
Yeah, smart ass, bring it on. The two sources I saw, one was when King, I can't remember his name, King of France, sent for all the Templars to be arrested. It was on Friday the 13th, supposedly. And the other source I saw was that the Last Supper, supposedly Jesus was arrested on Friday the 13th or whatever. So the Last Supper was Thursday the 12th or whatever, and it happened.
Good Friday?
Yeah. And so it had something to do with that. But I saw a bunch of stuff about the phobia of the number 13 was that
triskaidekaphobia.
Triskaidekaphobia, and then literature. You go back, Fridays were generally unlucky, and the number 13 was generally unlucky, and then at some point it got combined, like in the Middle Ages.
Oh yeah, Julie said it's the Templars thing.
Ooh, on point. So two votes for that. That's not even what our show's about. I just thought it was interesting that we were doing it. Okay, so there's a Friday the 13th every year, and sometimes there's 3 Friday the 13ths in a year, and 2020 will be the last year that there's 2 Friday the 13ths, and for the next...
I like the meme where it says, Friday the 13th is going to fall on Halloween this year, and inevitably, like 3 people on my timeline share that, and I'm like, you understand...
That Halloween's on the
31st?
Yeah.
Well, are you sharing this ironically?
Man, no one else will find this funny. I don't know what I'm saying. But, there was one meeting we were having at work or whatever, and the owner was up there talking about something. He's like, all right, so Christmas falls on the 25th this year, and we were all like, what the
Like every other year.
Yeah.
Weird. It's weird.
So what we're kicking around today, it's kind of multiple topics, like, rolled into one.
We've run out of ideas, so now we're just rolling the dice and picking out, like, 6 different topics to talk every time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess the talk kind of centers around Deja Vu.
Oh, tonight's a full moon, too?
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God, I feel bad for anyone working in the ER tonight.
It's a fucking trifecta.
Ah, man. People say the full moon doesn't actually have to do with anything, but, man, after working in the hospital, you get to thinking. It's got some sort of connotation.
Okay, so you've worked in the ER. It really does get busier?
It gets busier on the full moon. I think it's because people associate the full moon with acting crazy, and therefore they do.
Do you think it's just because, okay, and this will go into our discussion later when it gets into memory, or do you think you're just associating because since it was a full moon, you're thinking about it, so you're paying more attention to the things that happened
I don't know.
that day. It's not really any more busy than any other day.
I just know there were a few people that didn't even know it was the full moon, and they go, man, it's crazy tonight. But maybe they knew it subconsciously and not, like, on their level.
Right.
That's likely, I mean.
So, statistically, almost everybody here, Valley Spirit Communications says hi from California. Hi. Harvest moon is tomorrow, the full moon tonight. Full moon affects the tides. Next time it'll happen Friday the 13th and 2049, so I'll be dead by then.
Next time, 2049. I won't be dead. I'll be like...
Who's spending their time calculating that? That's a lot of thought.
I'll be old. That's...
Classy.
I'll be like 64.
Classy podcast. No, but we've been talking about Deja Vu pretty much.
A full moon affects the tides more, but only slightly, right?
Yeah, it's enough. I mean, it changes the...
Oh, yeah, people theorize that the full moon actually, because you have water in your body, affects it, but it's such a minute effect, like when they study stuff like that they don't think it's possible for that to actually be affecting.
Well, I know that the moon is partially responsible for the way our tectonic plates move, because as the moon orbits around us and we spin... Of course, you have to subscribe that the Earth is round. Our last guest, no, he knows the Earth is round, but he talked to a flat earther, and that angers me. But
I find it interesting.
As it moves around, it does a pull, and it makes the Earth, kind of squishy ball or whatever. And
less of a ball, more of a whatever that shape is.
And that causes the tides and the waves and the movement of the tectonic plates, and makes liquid hot magma come up and do cool things like that.
Yeah, there is some science that says it could affect people, but...
lycanthropy?
Yeah, or clinical lycanthropy.
We already did an episode on clinical lycanthropy. It's like in our top 20 episodes. It gets a lot of downloads.
Anyway, have we talked about this before? It's weird. I've got this feeling of...
I don't know. Could you quit hitting the microphone?
No.
Could you have just like
the
Brad's
grabbing at me. That's definitely giving me deja vu.
Freaking, that's PTSD, not deja vu. Just display a little bit of professionalism.
No. Okay, belch into the mic.
Hey, it was clear.
Display some professionalism.
So deja vu is the feeling that you have done something before, or like you do something and then you suddenly feel like you've had that experience before. And I've seen different depictations. Is that the word?
I don't know what you're going for. So
I've seen it depicted differently in different things. Like, the title of the podcast was "Whoa, Deja Vu," from The Matrix, and the way it's displayed in that movie, I've never experienced it like that, where he's like walking up the stairs, he sees the cat, and like a few seconds later, he sees the cat again, like immediately. Like, oh, I just experienced that 5 minutes ago, and then I experienced it again. I've never had that. Like, every time I've ever experienced deja vu, like, it's like, oh, I picked up this paper and started reading this thing. Man, it feels like I did this, like, weeks ago. Like, does that make sense?
Sometimes I'll get it, like, I think I dreamed about this last night. Yeah, like that's the most like shortest time in between when I feel like I've got the deja vu from and when I get the deja vu.
Yeah, so I've seen it split up into, let's see, they had a list here of different types of deja vu where it was like immediate and like dream based, and then like longer periods of time in between how you perceived when you did it or whatever. But there's some research into deja vu, but there's a surprising lack of medical knowledge. I mean, there's a lot of like medical knowledge out there about it, but there's a surprising lack of scientific information about what causes it.
There's a lot of medical guesses. There's not a lot of medical facts.
Which I find interesting because, you know, a lot of what me and you deal with, like on the show and when we're doing stuff, you know, we look into these like alternate reasons, but a lot of that is rooted in like straight fact. Like, we did this study and found this thing out. This is one of the few topics where I started kind of like looking into it. And even the scholarly articles and the medical articles were kind of like,
we think this is the reason.
We don't really know. And then I was really surprised that frequent deja vu is a cause for concern, too. Like, I never thought of that as like a weird thing. Now, you said you experience deja vu pretty frequently.
Yeah, like a couple times a week at least.
That sounds really high to me. I don't think I've had deja vu in like 3 or 4 years.
I was reading that article and it said there's a link between that and people who remember their dreams.
Which is something. So, but do you lucid dream, or do you just?
No, I just have very vivid dreams that I remember every aspect of when I wake. Like, I'll probably remember 4 or 5 dreams a night in detail. And they don't fade like other people seem to. Like, I remember them forever.
One of the things I think is like a really, easy correlation to make is that the lack of medical research and fact that medicine is putting into it, or psychology is putting into it, whatever angle you want to look at it, the lack of facts that are there makes the paranormal theories and stuff run rampant and seem even more credible because they can always cite back to the fact, well, medical science doesn't really know. Like, even if this is a theory, it really is a theory. You know, kind of the same way the flat earthers do with their, well, gravity's just a theory. Well, you clearly misunderstand what theory means in scientific terms. But I think this might be one of the few cases that the paranormal community, looking at deja vu as evidence of other phenomenon, actually have a little bit of a leg to stand on, because
there's no medical leg to stand on. There was an interesting case I was reading about this girl that had deja vu really intensely for a long time, a couple weeks, and she was having other symptoms, and they found out she was status epilepticus. So that's when you're having a seizure they can't stop, is status epilepticus. And most of the time you see that because they're having a grand mal seizure that they can't stop through the use of PAMs.
Say again. She
was status epilepticus.
Okay.
So that's when someone's having a seizure you cannot stop. It's a medical emergency.
I didn't know you could stop a seizure. I didn't know you could stop a seizure.
Well, if you don't stop a seizure, you die. Seizures generally last under 60 seconds.
You don't mean somebody stopping it.
You can stop it, but most of them stop on their own. To stop a seizure, you'd administer something like Valium, like a diazepam.
Okay.
A PAM, a benzo.
That's something I didn't know. I thought all seizures had to run their course. Why do you think
they diagnosed me Xanax when I was having seizures?
Well, I knew that it could prevent.
No, it could stop.
It could help. I didn't know it could stop. Well, how the hell are you going to take a Xanax when you
they inject it?
Having a seizure.
They inject. You go to the hospital. You're status epilepticus. They inject you with Valium.
Okay.
That stops the seizure, but sometimes you can't stop these. Now, this girl was having.
Okay. I'm sorry, but no, I have a legitimate question. Yeah. So, but that goes into your bloodstream. So a seizure is like a disconnect in the brain, right?
It's your brain firing randomly.
So, but if medicine doesn't break like your blood-brain barrier, how does
medicine does break your blood-brain barrier?
Yeah, but not that quickly. Like, even if
it does if it's injected.
Okay.
To me, if
that's just me not being medical. That's just me not being medical.
Okay, in movies, when they shoot medicine into your arm, no, that's going to take 20 to 30 minutes to work. If they shoot that into your jugular vein or your AC right here in your arm, no, that's immediate.
Okay.
There's 5 seconds between the injection and when that works.
And a drug going into your blood can change your brain activity.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know didn't know drugs could function that way.
Yes.
I thought brain activity was I just didn't know it could be treated that quickly with drugs. I know, like, if I take antidepressants or
that's
benzos
different.
or whatever, like, it takes a little bit.
Well, that's because it's building up levels in your bloodstream.
Right. I didn't know that there was like a straight injection.
Now, benzos, unlike daily antidepressants, don't have to build up a level in your bloodstream. They're fast acting. They're immediate action medications.
Okay.
So anyway, she was having all these symptoms. She's having
what's it called again? What type?
Status epilepticus.
Okay.
She's having, but she's not having a seizure. She's not having a visible seizure, but she goes in and she has an EEG, and turns out she is status epilepticus. It's just going on in her brain.
Just constantly.
Yeah, she's constantly having a seizure.
And it looks like a storm on the EEG.
But in her body, there's nothing going on. So they fix this, and she finds out that it was this deja vu that was going on was actually just a seizure that lasted a month.
That's nuts. So, like, every action that she took all day, she just constantly felt like
everything she'd done before.
Wow. I wonder, I wonder how much, like, paranormal stuff she went through. You know, because that's like a strange thing going on.
Well, she had some other symptoms, like she felt like she was floating above her body.
See, like, these are all things that somebody might think are a paranormal experience and talk to somebody like us. And, like, if the group doesn't have somebody like you on board that's, you know, at least knowledgeable about these different medical conditions and things like that, they would be like, oh, yeah, it's you talking to your spirit self and stuff like that.
Status epilepticus is really rare.
Well, yeah.
But it is a thing that happens.
Sleep paralysis, but we seem to run into all the sleep paralysis.
I don't think sleep paralysis is that rare.
I don't think it's as rare as it's reported as.
Oh, Always says, superstition says if you remember a dream, it's not a dream, it's a message. Well, then I get a lot of messages every single night. I remember my dreams because I have severe, long-lasting insomnia. So I wake up every time I come out of REM sleep.
Yeah, one of the things, like, back when I was really trying to get into lucid dreaming and I was doing the exercises and stuff, one of the things I heard, and I actually just saw it on a documentary yesterday too, they mentioned it there, that said if you want to learn to lucid dream better, or you want better memory recall, drink 3 big glasses of water before you go to bed.
So you have to get up to pee when you dream?
Yeah, and what it does is it interrupts your REM cycle, or just after your REM cycle, because what will happen is your body will be like, all right, get done with this, and then, you know, inevitably the end of the dream will be, man, I had to pee and I couldn't find, and you'll wake up and you'll remember it because you're awake, and then you go back to bed.
Another interesting case was a man with Alzheimer's who he had stopped watching TV because he said, I've seen all these shows before. He wouldn't read the paper because he went, I've read that before, which is interesting because the hallmark of that disease is you can't remember anything.
What part of your brain? So he had, like...
But instead, he felt like he was in a constant, never-ending, irritating time loop. Oh, Haiti says hi. Oh, I miss you too.
Howdy. Yeah.
So that's really weird to me because it's like almost the exact opposite of what Alzheimer's does. So he's just caught in this really depressing time loop where he doesn't even want to read newspapers, which is what old people do. So what did he do with his time?
Voted Republican? I don't know. That's what old people do
Repeatedly?
Too. Yeah. He's like, I've already voted for this asshat. No, that is real interesting because usually people with Alzheimer's, I can't ever say it. Alzheimer's. You know, just can't remember anything, and it's like he's remembering everything.
Yeah. But instead, he just thought he was remembering everything.
Do we know what part of the brain Alzheimer's?
Pretty much all of it.
Just all of it in general?
It's just a brain. It's like dementia. Your whole brain degrades. I'm sure it affects some areas more than others, like probably the memory portions of the brain.
Well, it sounds like it really, really affects your hippocampus, which is the portion of your brain that pulls all the sensory input from your memories together and, like, reconstructs memories, because your memories aren't just stored, like, in one place or another.
Well, yeah, I'm sure, because really often they remember stuff that happened a very long time ago.
Right, yeah, their long-term memory is not as affected, yeah, and it's their short-term, but it sounds like his short-term memory and his long-term memory were just kind of
flip-flopped almost?
Like, yeah, and the hippocampus is responsible for flipping those back and forth. But
no, I've seen brain scans for people from Alzheimer's, and basically their whole brain shrinks.
Well, and And there's tons of medical theories in there. I kind of wanted to touch on some of the paranormal stuff too, though. But there's a lot of people that either they're not exposed to the medical information.
Oh yeah, Daniel says it degrades memory, sensory input, and emotion. Yeah, they have wacky emotions.
Where they like fly off the handle, like rage. That was one of the things with your grandfather-in-law.
It was someone else in my family. It was someone in my stepdad's family. But he became abusive, which was really weird for him because he'd been a real mild-mannered, good dude his whole life. But and that's what I was scared about.
Just like
and when my grandpa got it, I was scared that was something he was going to do because it was something
it's not even knowingly either.
No.
It's just like a personality.
Yeah, these are non-violent people.
Yeah,
they can no longer understand their surroundings or anything going around them. That would make me violent too.
It's a part of your brain that controls inhibition too. It's also affected. I knew somebody in high school that got in a car wreck, and that portion of their brain that controls inhibition just like went out the window. And they were just like lived life with
bad frontal lobe damage.
Yeah, and just reckless abandon. Like they were completely different. Like they were nice. It was still a nice person, but but personality wise, like they would just take like these really weird, unnecessary risks. Like even just a little bit of brain damage or brain disease or something like that can completely change somebody's personality in the way they remember things.
They used to think concussions weren't at all a big deal, but they come to find out that even a very mild concussion can cause post-concussive syndrome, which can last the rest of your life and can affect the way you act. Even a mild concussion when you're a kid can affect your brain the rest of your life.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that they started doing more research into the disease you get from
like the football players that have multiple.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of it for a second. They made a whole movie about it, and it's still largely ignored data, which is pretty bad because there's a lot of those guys like running around. A boxer just died the other day. Yeah, he got knocked out hard, but he woke up and they thought everything was fine and they were treating him. And he died in his sleep the next day.
I have a friend that when I was 18, he got into a really bad car wreck, and he hit his head. He ended up in a coma for 18 days, but he came out of it. And after that, it's like his whole personality. Like he was able.
Isn't he trans now?
Well, that I'm sure. I don't know if that was a thing before though, because that was from before. Like when you probably wouldn't have told a bunch of people about that.
Right, okay, so that's hard to gauge.
I'm not sure how much that affected him. I do know that he started just saying everything that popped into his head. So you'd be out with him in public and he'd just say these horrible, disgusting things. Like in the middle of Walmart, just yell them.
Yeah.
And he was a good guy.
It's almost like Tourette's.
Yeah, he just had absolutely no control over what was coming out of his mouth. And you can't really be mad because it's not their fault.
Yeah,
he had a TBI, a severe TBI.
Yeah, I mean, there's one camp of people that'd be like, well, I don't, because that's what they're really thinking. Man, everybody has that horrible thought, but some of us have better filters. We don't just say it out loud.
Steven calls it a CNN ticker. You know how that scroll goes on the bottom of CNN? That's what he calls his horrible thought stream, is the CNN ticker of bad thoughts.
I mean, like, I do a lot of, like, comedy and stuff like that. And, like, when a celebrity dies or something bad happens, like, I've already thought of, like, a joke. Now, I don't necessarily
say it out loud,
but I'm still at my core a really horrible person. And
everybody is. It's okay.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody has that initial thought, and that's not what makes you bad. Like,
and we could also do a whole podcast on humans dealing with negative emotions through humor. So,
but with the deja vu thing, well, specifically with all these things we're going to bring, deja vu is just the big one, and the one that most people probably have experienced too. I think the percentage I looked up is like 90% of people experience deja vu. Could you imagine being in the 10% of people that have never had deja vu before? Because like it's this weird phenomenon that kind of exists out there that almost like if you say deja vu, they know what you're talking about, right?
And Stephen King did that book. It's a short story called "That Feeling," the one you can only say in French.
Right? Yeah, and it's such a weird feeling that they don't even translate it from French. Like they're just like, oh, it's deja vu, and that's what it means. Like deja and it means a thing, but that's not necessarily like the purpose of the word. They're just like, no, it's deja vu, and everybody's like, oh yeah, like in other countries they call it that. Like, yeah, the French came up with a name for that. Did you figure out what the name of the other thing was? The call to the void.
L'appel de vide. I can't pronounce
Tabula rasa?
it. No, that's Latin, you idiot. Let me look it up. It's appel du vide, I think. APPEL space DU space VIDE, and that's the call of the void. That's I'm driving down the highway and I think, man, I could just run off the road right now.
Now, see, that I experience at least 9 or 10 times a day. A
big one is if you're somewhere high and you go, I could just jump right now. That's the call of the void.
Well, it's that, like, I'm afraid of heights, right? But if I'm standing at the top of the building, I'm going to look over the edge.
And go, Which apparently is really normal.
Yeah, actually, if you don't do that, you have a freak. Well, you have a higher chance of being a serial killer. Serial killers don't have that. That was one of the things.
Because they think to themselves, I could go out and murder a bunch of women, and they're like, yeah, that's a thing I should do.
Yeah, and then they just can do it.
There's no limiting factor in their brain.
They ignore the concussion injuries because it's on their heads. That's awesome.
That's funny.
I think that every day at work, and it gives me a weird feeling. Oh, yeah, and he works construction, too.
Yeah.
He's probably sitting there watching the dude use the jackhammer. He's like, I could just kill him right now.
I get it most when I'm driving down the road, and I could be like, I could just pull into oncoming traffic. And it's not even like a suicidal ideation. It's just a passing, I could do this thing.
Oh, and it's fleeting, too.
Yeah.
It does associate with depression, but doesn't have to be part of that.
Oh no, I know perfectly happy people that have these thoughts.
Like okay, so me is one example, because every day I'm driving to work and I'm driving and I see the exit I need to take. I'm like, if I just turn 10 feet earlier,
I could hit this brick wall.
I can hit this brick wall and not have to go to work, and it'd solve all my problems right now, except for the fact I'd probably never walk again, and it would fuck up my Mustang, but I'm like, might be a trade-off, and then I go to work anyway. And then there's like perfectly like normal people.
Well, that was a meme on Facebook for a while. It was like, no one, me, I could drive into oncoming traffic.
Yeah.
It's just random.
Hey, that's part of a 21 Pilots song too.
Yeah, car radio.
Thanks. Yeah, I could jerk the steering wheel.
I could pull the steering wheel.
I like
You always do the lyric wrong.
You always do the
lyric
wrong.
Learn your 21 Pilots lyrics, you fucking heathen.
I think you live in a parallel universe where that thing's going on.
Yeah, what if I just go over that bridge? I have those thoughts a lot. Yeah, I wonder if that's what causes wrong way drivers. No, I think being an idiot causes wrong way.
There's that and drinking.
Or being in Dallas. That causes wrong way drivers.
Well, if they didn't have so many fucking one-way streets.
Existing in Dallas causes wrong way drivers.
But there is a leg to stand on for a lot of the paranormal explanations, and the two big ones. One is clairvoyance, which that's what. Okay, so let's.
Deja vu can be being psychic.
Let's just do this. Deja vu could be clairvoyance. You've seen an event before it happens, and then you see it. Shut up. And then the other explanation I see a lot is you are getting ripples or glimpses into a parallel universe, and then you get into like Mandela effect and things like that.
Which is one I hadn't actually heard until recently.
Well, it makes sense to a degree, because I'm a very, very strong proponent of parallel universes. It's mathematically it makes sense. There's a lot of theoretical physics that go into it that make it very, very probable.
Yes, there are probably other dimensions.
My idea of parallel universes and other dimensions and stuff wouldn't really line up with why deja vu would be a thing. How I think of it doesn't really mesh up, but the way other people think about parallel universes is there's like infinite possibilities, and some of them are very similar, some of them are very radically different, but there's 1,000 versions of you that do different things or act differently in another universe, blah blah blah, and it's just exponentially infinitesimal, like the amount.
So this is the thing other universe you has experienced?
Yeah, and it kind of goes along with that Mandela effect. So like when you remember Berenstain Bears as opposed to Berenstain Bears, it's almost a form of deja vu because there's some kind of divergence between the two, and for whatever reason, like if your brain occupies the same space at the same time as the other dimension or whatever, then you kind of get the glimpses of those other dimensions, and that's why it seems familiar. It doesn't quite add up. It's really, really similar, but it's not quite the same thing.
And the Bernstein Bears thing hurts my head because it causes cognitive dissonance, and it's physically painful. They're just talking about driving the wrong way, because Allie's mom's from a different country, so she just apparently drives the wrong way, because... Hey, I'm going to be in Granbury all week, so I need to remember not to drive anywhere near where she is.
Yeah, just not on the right side of the road. She's got to like the sudden uprise and roundabouts that we're starting to experience here in the U.S.
So many roundabouts.
Here in Texas, oh man, I was driving through Saginaw the other day where I grew up, and there was like 30 roundabouts, all just right there. I'm like, why are these here? These don't belong. And I seem to be the only person that knows how to drive on those. Everybody
Maybe that's
else just
encroachment from the alternate dimension of roundabouts.
Well, they did start in 2013, so that might be what that's when I think everything went downhill.
Yes, we said roundabout, Emilio. What do you call them?
Roundabout?
A traffic circle.
Yeah, roundabout. They're Canadian.
Oh, yeah, Danielle says multi-world theory. Yeah, that's the idea where, the deja vu is actually us just experiencing what I guess we would experience in alternate dimensions.
I think it's an interesting thought process, and it's at least an interesting thought exercise or thought experiment. In that, is it possible that there's other dimensions where they're very, very similar to ours? Well, so what we know about alternate dimensions past our own, which it's really hard to know and even theorize, like, because even when the math supports the idea that could be a thing, it's still this really wacky thought process because we can't understand things outside of our own dimension. Now, I think I talked about that on the last episode. Is like if you're a two-dimensional being, you can't. There's no way you can fully comprehend past a thought experiment what 3 dimensions are. Or 2 dimensions if you're one-dimensional. Like, it's hard to go into that next step. And our biggest thought process of what is the 4th dimension is the passing of time. Mm-hmm. But what a lot of our studies have shown is that time really, like, and you'll hear every nihilist say it, but time really is a construct that like we've designed. Like, time doesn't pass. Time is a function of gravity and space together, and it's affected by gravity. That's why time's not a constant. We used to think of time as a constant, but it turns out the further you get away from strong gravity pulls, the time starts...
you were talking about if you're going into a black hole, the time...
Yeah, and the closer and closer and closer you get to it, time gets faster and faster and faster.
I think you said it got weird. I think that was your exact scientific term.
It gets weird.
Time gets weird.
It gets to the point that it's not even linear anymore because gravity is going to warp it to where it's almost circular. So you might actually experience those things. So deja vu could actually be situations where you've temporarily run into some kind of gravity wave or things like that. You could even say that electromagnetic fields, which which we think interfere with gravity a little bit or are interfered with by gravity, interfere with the way that your brain works, and so it could actually warp your time perception in your head. Like, things could actually be taking longer or looping over and over again, because the big medical explanation I saw is that there's a short circuit between your short-term and your long-term memory, right? And so
what I saw was that your short-term memory is being bypassed and things are being logged just into your long-term memory. So when you see it again, it's a thing that happened.
Yeah, and see, I've seen a little bit on where, like, your short-term memory is being bypassed, so it's just pulling straight from your long-term memory. And I've also seen where it's committing to both at the same time. Mm-hmm. Like your hippocampus is actually sending signals to both spots at the same time for some reason.
That sounds the most plausible to me.
It's just kind of short-circuited, and so it feels like something that's happened in the past, but you can never quite recall exactly when it happened. And that's what makes deja vu weird. Like, in instances where you've done something and then you do it again, it doesn't feel weird because you remember that last time you did it. Like, you can like, we did this podcast last week, but there's a separation. It's in our long-term memory. We know when it happened. We know that there were some differences in it. But the phenomenon of deja vu is it feels like the exact same thing, but you can't place when it happened. And that could be dissonance from that could be, they have different explanations for it. One being your short term and your long term are getting fired up at the same time. There could be dissonance from actual time fluctuations just kind of localized to you. Seeing into these alternate dimensions, things like that. But a lot of people get deja vu because they swear they dreamed this scenario first. Like, they remember it from a dream. Like, they remember doing it in a dream before it actually happened, and then the thing happens. And that's where you get into kind of like the precognition.
Well, and that's
and
my most common one, but I think that also amounts to confirmation bias. You see a thing happen, you think, oh, I knew this was going to happen, but did you really?
Well, and that, okay, so, and that's a thing. So barring you, most people have a hard time with dream recall. That's something that... Which
is so weird to me. I just really thought that everyone remembered their dreams.
Well, and it also makes me wonder if you accurately recall your dreams, or if you fill in the gaps during your waking moments or later after you've thought about it. Like, there's no way to really know that, because the entire thing exists in your
head.
In your own head. And reality is... There's no such thing as objective reality.
It's probably all of those things.
Yeah, we all experience our own reality. Like 30, 40 years ago, people before they did studies of REM sleep didn't think you had dreams while you were sleeping. They thought it happened in that instant
where you woke up.
Instant where you woke up and you just remembered this whole thing. And then they figured out that the rapid eye movement was this, because they started doing the brain scans, what'd you call it, fMRI?
Yeah, fMRI scans, functional MRI tests.
Yeah, and they showed, like, as you're trying to fall asleep, your brain patterns are like out of control. You're totally ADD, and then once you finally start to fall asleep, your brain waves just freaking like flatline nearly. Like, everything just shuts down, goes into low power mode. But then out of nowhere, for no reason whatsoever, all of a sudden your brain lights up like it's awake, except for the bottom part of your brain. I can't remember what it's called. The one that controls like your movement and all that. The part that's responsible for sleep paralysis.
Motor cortex? I don't know.
Possibly, I don't know.
There's 2 different chemicals that are responsible for sleep paralysis.
Well, anyway, your entire brain lights up except for that, which is just in like super suppression mode or whatever. And they figured out that's the part where you have, because they'll wake people up when they're doing that, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm dreaming about this thing. But if you wake them up before that or after that, they'll be like, I wasn't thinking about anything, let me go back to sleep. But those kind of studies really interest me, like how the different parts of the brain communicate to each other, because there's that old stupid trope about you only use 10% of your brain, but that never really came from anywhere. They're talking about PTSD. But it's interesting because, like, I always thought, so you have like long-term and short-term memory. Short-term memory I always used to think of as like the RAM in your computer, where it's for, opening things up and it holds it like temporarily. And then long-term memory was like the hard drive in your computer, where you would like install all your games and stuff, and it does that, and all that stuff stays there even after you turn the computer off and back on and things like that. And I always thought memories were kind of stored in 1 or 2 different sections. And what I recently learned is that it's not. It's stored in all the sensory portions of your brain. Like, so you remember the way things felt or the way things smelled or heard, tasted. It's all through sensory stuff, and it gets stored in all these different parts of your brain. And your hippocampus is the part of your brain that's responsible for, like, when you're trying to recall something, it goes and it pulls all the little pieces.
It's tying it together.
It puts it together and it recreates a scene for you, which is like only like 50% accurate most of the time, something like that. So, from the medical perspective of deja vu, it would be more blamed on your brain's just not really piecing all that information together correctly. And then, like you said, there's been a lot of studies that show it's actually kind of like a seizure. Because I think when people think of seizures, the only ones they think about are like where you're flopping around and
grand mal as opposed to petite mal seizures, which are way different.
And I think most people actually have seizures and don't realize it. It's a pretty common thing.
I think you think most, but I'm not sure that's true. I think you're also calling any brain disruption where things are just firing randomly a seizure, which isn't technically true.
Okay.
Your brain can misfire pretty often. It's not always a seizure. It is seizure-like in that things aren't doing what they're supposed to do. They're being random. They're not.
Well, what's that thing where you just like stare off into space for nothing?
That's a petite mal seizure. So it's called an absent seizure.
Okay.
That's the kind Andrew had when he was little, where he'd like stare off into space and make these weird gulping noises, and it only lasts a few seconds, and a lot of people miss them because it doesn't look like what you'd think a seizure to look like. But yeah, they're called absent seizures. So you're absent. They don't remember it happened usually. Time just passed in an instant for them. What might have been 10 seconds for you watching them going, what the hell is going on? Why are they staring blankly at the wall? To them, no time has passed.
Now, would that be in your temporal lobe? Would that be cause...
What do I look like, a neurologist to you?
Closest thing I know to one. Jeez.
Well, then you need to probably find someone better at that, because I'm no doctor.
Well, I asked that because deja vu is most strongly associated with temporal lobe epilepsy. And it says if you actually have deja vu, like, really often, then you probably need to go to the doctor, which was really alarming for me. I never thought that deja vu was a symptom of anything. I thought it was just kind of like a weird thing that happens.
Well, they said it could be a symptom of a couple different things. But mostly it's not a symptom. Mostly it's just people getting deja vu, and of course people get that in differing amounts. So don't jump to the conclusion that you've had deja vu 6 times this week, therefore you have a brain tumor.
Now, I think everybody's had deja vu, but there's also jamis vu, which is the opposite, where everything you do, you feel like you've never, ever done it before, like, to the point where you're like, oh, what's a microphone? Like, it's the exact opposite of deja vu. And it's such a weird...
I have that with math.
It's such a weird... I don't know. It's such a weird concept to me. Like, I can't even, like, imagine it. Like, even when they say, oh, it's the opposite of deja vu, I'm like, what the hell is that? Because deja vu is already such a weird concept anyway, but since everybody's kind of experienced it, you can kind of speak the same language. But I don't know that I've ever had... Have you really... Or were you just making a joke, or have you really had that where it's like the opposite of deja vu?
Sometimes I'll be doing something and Steven will be like, I don't understand your problem. You've done this 100 times before. And I'm like, I literally don't remember ever doing this. I get it mostly with TV shows where Steven's like, how are you watching this again? You've watched it 3 times. And I'm like, I don't remember ever watching this.
Okay, so I guess maybe I have experienced it, because it's like... Because I don't feel like I forgot something, the information just isn't there. So maybe I'm imagining it wrong. Like, there's like this weird feeling that accompanies it, but it would just be a blankness. Like, you wouldn't even realize that you're repeating an action over.
It takes someone else pointing it out to me.
What is deja vu?
There's one of them on there that's dream recall, but I don't remember what the name for that is. Vita? I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
There's so many freaking notes and...
Well, one of them was in the big, long article I sent you, the one about the guy with the Alzheimer's and the girl with the status epilepticus.
I find it really interesting that, like, in the face of all the research and advances we have and everything, people can still put paranormal labels to things, or just take that extra step. And I don't know, like, this is an interesting topic to me, just for the fact that, like, how does medical science not know how to explain this yet? And my guess to it is, because that's what the paranormal groups are going to say, is like, well, why hasn't medical science figured this out if they're so smart? Well, it's really just not that big of an issue. Like, it seems like cancer is probably more important to fix. There's probably just not a lot of research going into it.
There's another interesting thing in this article that I forgot to bring up. That I really like it. It's called Capgras syndrome. That's imposter syndrome, when you think someone like your best friend or your spouse, is actually an imposter. It's like body snatcher syndrome. So you think they're not them. They're some sort of imposter that's taken over.
See, I can relate to that after our Kyle experiences.
Yeah, you can recognize someone as familiar, but you may not have the right support. You don't have the right emotions like you would normally feel for them. So you're led to the conclusion that they've been replaced by somebody.
Man, I seem to remember some kind of movie about that, and I can't.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
No, somebody that actually had like that disease, or I don't know if it's a disease, but was having that particular thing, and they were just completely like alienated from they went home and they were like, this isn't my family. Like, they all look like my family, but this isn't my family. Maybe it was Chameleon? Maybe that was it. I can't remember. It's been a while.
Deja Vu? Which that one? People with Deja Vu don't only feel as if something is familiar. It really seems that they have lived that moment before.
Now, see, that's what I get.
I thought that was the same thing.
Yeah. When I say deja vu, that's what I'm talking about.
I thought that's what it meant.
Like, I always remember this one moment I had, and I was younger, and I can't remember like exactly what I was doing. I think I was cleaning up my room or something, but I always remember like picking up these cards off the ground, like I was playing poker or whatever. And I think I was supposed to be cleaning my room, but I was like jacking around, doing everything but cleaning my room. And I was like sitting there playing cards or something. And I remember like pulling this hand, and it was the exact same hand. But I remember it wasn't just that, oh, I got this exact same hand. It was, man, I picked it up in this exact same way. I was wearing these exact same clothes.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say deja vu too.
Yeah, like everything is exactly the same. Not just like, oh, I've done this before. So I guess deja vu is like that scene in The Matrix where it's like, I think I saw the same cat. Whoa. By the way, who just announces that they had deja vu just now? Like, have you ever done that? Like, had deja vu and you're like, whoa, deja vu.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I never once did I say anything. I always like thought in my head, I'm like, oh, that's weird, and then like went on about my day. But I'm just thinking how the plot of that entire movie would have went completely effing different if he had just kept his mouth shut, because they would have just kept going up the stairs. Nobody would have said jack shit. Is deja vu related to precognition? Well, that's kind of
some people think it is.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about before. I mean, I guess it's a theory. I guess it's an idea.
I don't so much believe in precognition, but people that do think that that's a sign that they've had some sort of psychic experience.
I mean, if you think about it, suppose for a moment you can see into the future, like either on purpose or just as a side product of being clairvoyant or whatever. I would think that it would make time passing very confusing for that person, because if they're not understanding that they're seeing into the future, then when that thing happens, it would create that sort of false memory feeling like all the time, and they would maybe pass that off. So if that was something that actually happened or existed, which I don't really subscribe to that sort of thing, but if that really was a thing that was happening, where you were somehow able to see further into time stream somehow, I think it would be really, really hard to distinguish that later moment from it just being a memory, right? As opposed to it being like a vision or whatever. But we were talking about like a lot of people get their deja vu because they felt like they dreamt it before, and a lot of people that are precognitive.
That's usually where mine come from. Like, I'll be sitting having lunch with my friends, and I go, man, I I remember having this exact same conversation in this exact same way. Like, they're going to say this next.
Yeah, and you had a dream about it. And that makes a lot of sense to me, because I think what a lot of people view as precognitive ability really is just dreaming, because one of the newest theories about, like, why, and this is another thing where medical science doesn't have a 100% answer. They got a lot of ideas about why we dream and how we dream and things like that, but they don't really know the exact answer, like why our brain does that. But one of the more credible ideas about why we dream is it's your brain taking knowledge that you have learned during the day or learned in your past or whatever, and it's running you through like all these scenarios. And what it's doing is it's saying, okay, you like I have real bad anxiety, and so one of the factors of anxiety is that my brain is as active awake during uncomfortable scenarios as it is when it's asleep. And normally you do that stuff when you're asleep and you can't act out, and what happens is you run through like all these scenarios where there's no like consequences or anything, and it runs like a billion and that's why your dreams are weird, because it's kind of doing all of them at the same time, like really fast or whatever. And so you've run through these like different life scenarios in your head, and then you wake up and you kind of forget about it, and then when you actually go do that action, you kind of recall that dream that you had, because it is stored kind of in your memory somewhere, because it was preparing you for like that moment to like help you socially navigate it without the consequences of having to, say the wrong thing or whatever. It's supposed to prepare you.
I don't know, my dreams are useless then, because a lot of them were about, how I live on a space station in the future.
Well, when the world ends, they're going to be very, very useful.
My dreams are great for when the world ends.
Do you have anything you can monologue about so I can go to the bathroom?
No.
Oh, man.
You're stuck.
But I really got to go to the bathroom.
Do you want me to read an article on genetic memory?
Yeah. Why don't you explain to the kids what genetic memory is so I can go to the bathroom real quick?
Fine. I hate it when you make me do this on my own.
Just talk to the people online. I'm sure
now
they
I'm
have
going to read an article.
Questions.
You better not take very long. Okay, so genetic memory. Well, I guess this article is talking about it like savants, because, a savant knows something that they haven't been taught, like a savant musician or a sculptor. So this person did a study on savants, and they're trying to figure out how they know things that they've never been taught. So there was a study a long time ago where they took these mice, and they teach them to run this maze, and then they breed the mice, and their babies quickly learn how to do this maze like way quicker than they should, and then their children just know how to do the maze. It's really weird, and I find it super interesting, and I hate Brad for leaving. Another one is they had all these earthworms, and they taught them to run a maze, and they cut them up, and they fed them to other earthworms, and those earthworms knew how to do the maze. So yeah, I find genetic memory super interesting, and it could also be the source of deja vu. But, of course, no one knows for sure if genetic memory is a thing. So, genetic memory, simply put, is complex abilities and actual sophisticated knowledge inherited along with other more typical and commonly acceptable physical characteristics. In savants, the music, art, or mathematical chip comes factory installed. So, yeah, they have that on as base knowledge, being able to compose a symphony or do a sculpture. Glad you're already back, because I'm having a rough time here.
Sorry, I had to piss like a racehorse.
I'm glad it was just pee-pee. I was explaining genetic memory, breeding mice. Their kids can run a maze, feeding earthworms to other earthworms.
Yeah, so...
and savants.
Yeah, the reason I brought up stuff about genetic memory is it's... I actually didn't see any research that supported this idea. This was an idea I had. I was like, I should also look up genetic memory, because I like a lot of the stuff I've read on it since it came out. And in my head, that could be a logical explanation for some instances of deja vu. So you already explained to the crowd what genetic memory is. It's memories that are locked in your DNA, basically.
Well, I found it interesting because when I was little, I knew a lot about medicine, and like people, my mom would trot it out like a party trick. Like, look at all this stuff this 4-year-old can do in the medical field. But the question for me would be, is that some sort of innate knowledge I was born with, maybe because my mom's a nurse? Or is it because I spent the formative years of my life working in the hospital and I just picked it up? Well, it's impossible to prove one way or the other.
Right, yeah. Well, and it could also explain a lot of things about, like, kids that have the past life memories, things like that. Julie said maybe the mice communicated and told them how to do the maze.
No, they made sure that they couldn't communicate.
Well, and there's did you talk about the
earthworms where they killed and fed them to other earthworms and they knew how to do the maze?
Yeah, I always found that really interesting. If genetic memory is a thing, then cloning will be awesome because you could just unlock the memories in the cloned body, and that's one of the thought processes behind it. But I thought it could connect to Deja Vu because you could basically
because then you're remembering something your parents.
Yeah, instead of it being like a subconscious sort of memory that's like ingrained there, it's coming to that conscious. You're just noticing that the memory's there, and so it almost seems like intrusive.
But my favorite thing we didn't research, and that's the sort of group memory.
Where a bunch of people remember the same thing. Well, no,
just that, like, all humans, like, if a bunch of humans feel some way, like, let's say it's been a real stressful day for the United States, and even if you haven't come out of your bedroom yet,
you just know
you just feel bad.
Like 9/11.
Yeah, but like,
I woke up on 9/11 and I hadn't turned on the news or anything, and I was just like, something is wrong with the force.
The day of the Pulse shooting. I woke up that morning and I just knew something bad had happened. Now, I hadn't turned on the news. I hadn't talked to anybody. So I kind of thought it would be interesting if there was a sort of group consciousness that doesn't really tell you anything specific. It's just sort of a feel in the air.
So by eating each other, we get their memories. Didn't they make a horrible zombie movie with that concept?
I don't know, but that's a lot of the reason that some tribal cultures were cannibalistic, is they thought they could learn stuff from eating their, victims.
Yeah, like but and of course I don't think we've done any.
Earthworms are a lot more simple, like body-wise, brain-wise. Collective conscious. Yeah, that's it. Collective consciousness, which I think is. I wish they do more studies on that. Even though it's pseudoscience, it's really interesting pseudoscience to me.
I'm sure there's like some psychological studies and some.
Well, you do pick up on the vibes of people near you because that's a survival instinct.
Well, that feeds into your empathy too. It doesn't necessarily have to be a memory or something that you're psychically sensing. You're picking up on subtle environmental cues, but this is all happening. Like, your brain is the fastest computer processor on the planet. Like, it processes things
for now,
like faster than light speed. Like, that's how fast your neurons are firing. So when your brain is doing information, like we're sitting here doing this is completely off the cuff, but we're able to like create it because our brain. Even when we think we're being slow and we're flubbing everything up, our brain is still working faster than what our body's doing. Like, what I'm saying is only barely catching up to what my brain is putting out there. And so empathy works the same. Like I'm recognizing facial cues and stuff like that. And when you talk to two different groups of people, like if you talk to people that don't have problems with like anxiety and depression, like we would call them baseline, since we're getting away from calling them normal. What would we call them? Typical,
yeah, neurotypical.
Yeah, neurotypicals. And then you talk to somebody like me that's got anxiety, and you show them the same 10 faces, from just like completely neutral to angry to happy or whatever. Neurotypicals, they divide them up a certain way, and then you get to people that aren't that have like problems with anxiety. They'll recognize more angry faces, and more stress. Like even though we're all looking at the same pictures, and so we all experience empathy a different way. And so people that think like they're empaths or like they're psychic or can read other people, they may just be able to pick up on social cues and visual cues and things like that faster than other people.
Well, it's like tarot card readers. Like, they're not reading your future. They're picking up on cues you're sending them. They're just really good at reading you.
And a lot of, and that's not to say that they're all fake. Like, sometimes...
Yes, it is.
No. What I'm saying is they may not realize that they're doing
Oh, no, I
that.
don't think most of them are liars.
Yeah.
They probably think they're picking up on stuff, but I really think they're just very good at it.
Yeah, that's why I have such a hard time between people that say that they're psychic and people that say that they're empaths. Like, if somebody just tells me that they're an empath, like they pick up on emotions and feelings and stuff like that, I'll listen a little bit more. I'll be like, well, I don't really think it's supernatural. I think it's this other thing, but we can kind of coexist in the same space because I think I'm just understanding more about this process you're going through.
And everyone's an empath. Even sociopaths and people with antisocial personality disorder are capable of empathy. It's just how they use it.
Right.
They just don't care. But everybody's capable of some empathy.
Well, you wouldn't be able to survive if you could not read other people's, like if you didn't know somebody was angry at you, or you didn't know when somebody was feeling like some kind of displeasure, you wouldn't be able to navigate socially like at all, and eventually your tribe would just like murder you because you just piss off so many people.
Remote viewers say they can see through others' eyes. That would look credit to collective consciousness. It would, except it's so specific. I mean, collective consciousness is just sort of like a feeling, whereas remote viewers say they can see specific things.
Yeah, in just to touch on that, like they're talking about specific things in a specific period of time, not over time. So, like, if you were thinking you were a remote viewer in that, like, you've seen a place that somebody else saw or things like that, yeah, you can kind of play off of empathy a little bit, because we all have kind of like a collective understanding of how the world works and things like that. So if I tell you I went to the desert, because we're from the same region, same part of Texas, things like that. If I say I went to the desert and laid out under the sun, your immediate thought is like sand, cactus, but I could have been talking about Antarctica. Antarctica is technically a desert. Yeah. But if you talk to somebody from Alaska or Antarctica and they're talking about the same scenario without that, and they're talking to somebody else that's from the same region.
Yeah, they're going to see something else in their heads.
Right, yeah, and there's a few psychological tests that work that way, and they can say, well, I remote viewed, but that's because you know this. A lot of times that's because you know the subject you're remote viewing with, right? But then there's the ones that say they talk to stranger, and the accuracy is like 50%, and anything where the accuracy is 50-50 isn't something that you can say is a thing.
Daniel says, why are a large amount of humans afraid of spiders in the dark? In reference to collective consciousness. And then Emilio says, fear in humans is a learned behavior. But it's also a correctly learned behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, babies probably started about 6 months old. Neither of my kids showed any fear of anything until they were about 6 months old. But they correctly learned to fear things like falling from a high space.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's a combination of both. So I think
there are inborn fears.
Yeah, I think there's inborn fears that are throwbacks to like our Neanderthal selves. Like we're afraid of the dark because that's when
you
predator,
couldn't see and things ate you.
You weren't as safe because you couldn't see. Your eyes dilate and things like that to help. Like we have a lot of functions.
Or fear of things that could potentially be venomous.
Yeah. But there's a lot of fears that are learned behaviors, and they prove that with the baby Albert experiment.
Yeah, they just made him, that poor kid, they just made him afraid of random things. They're like,
yeah, they made him afraid of
here's some stuffed animals, fear those.
Fear.
Well, no, they
they took the first one they did is they took a little fluffy
animal.
White,
they took soft stuffed animals or animals, and they made him.
It was a little mouse.
They made him terrified of it.
They gave him a lab rat, and every time he'd go to pet it,
they shock him.
No, they didn't shock him. Where did you hear that?
They did something mean to him.
No, they clanged two pieces of metal
so they
together.
scared the crap out of him, which is just as bad.
And he'd be like, "Oh God!" And they did that about 3 times, and he learned fuzzy is bad.
Fuzzy bad.
I can't imagine baby Albert is an adult, just...
His girlfriend gets him a stuffed animal and he just cries.
Or they're like outshot, because this was like, what, the 30s when they were doing... So like in the 50s, he would have been an adult, so she's like, take me out to buy a fur coat, daddy. And he's like, no, just sweat and just pouring down.
I'm pretty sure the Geneva Convention banned what we did to him. I'm just saying.
We learned a lot, though. I'm a big proponent of the Geneva Convention, but we learned a lot from some shady Nazis about a lot of different medical things.
Yeah, if not for Nazis, we wouldn't have plastic surgery.
I got kicked out of history class for that once. They were like, name three... They were like, name one bad thing that came out of World War II and name a good thing that came out of World War II.
Modern medicine.
Yeah, my answers were, we killed a lot of Jews. Or not we. I was like, they killed a lot of Jews and modern medicine. And she's like, that wasn't a good thing. They tortured them to get
did.
that.
It's an awful thing they did.
I'm like, but do you throw away the research? How stupid.
War is the prime driving force behind modern medicine.
The answer my teacher was looking for was nothing. Nothing good. I think the answer she was looking for was that the economy got boosted.
Oh. No, it's a horrible thing that happened, but we tend to learn from really horrible things.
Well, and also I think people that, are okay with war and stuff like that are the ones that like, well, it really boosts the economy. That's always the go-to, and it's like, that's not a good reason for war.
It's not a good reason for war.
That's probably the worst reason ever for war.
The Civil War is the reason we know so much about amputations. And actually, the disease I have, the CRPS, was discovered during the Civil War because they were doing so many amputations and people had such horrific injuries.
And I think that's when they started studying the phantom limb syndrome, too.
Yeah, because it's the same research.
I still feel my arm.
Phantom limb and CRPS come from the same research. So, yeah, they learned so much from that. But, I mean, just the horrible things that happen to humans as a whole, they do teach us a lot.
Think back to the first human that had something going wrong, and they're like, my solution to this is to cut it off. Just, can you imagine the horror of everybody else in that tribe around him? He's like, cut my arm off. No, Bill, no, Bill Skarsgård, that's bad.
No, Bill Skarsgård, stop eating children. Oh my God, that whole movie that kept popping in my head. Bill Skarsgård, no, stop eating the children. Speaking of World War II, epigenetics, good or bad?
What is what? Where do you see that?
Eugenics from Emilio. Speaking of things from World War II, go up with your mouse. Go up with your mouse. Right? Note down. Up. There you go.
Okay. Of course that's Emilio. Epigenetics.
I don't know what epigenetics is.
Google. Hey, Google, what's epigenetics?
A lot we know about twins we learned because of Mengele. Yeah.
A monster, but a very inventive doctor. There's, some of the best things in the world. In a lot of the
study of changes in organisms caused by modification of gene expression rather than alteration of the genetic code itself. What?
I don't know. It really. To get to the core of all those questions, like, well, how do you feel about God, and how do you feel about playing God?
I feel good about it.
I think if it's for the greater good, it's fine. I do think there's lines. I don't.
Well, but that's why people are like stem cell research. None of that. That's playing God.
So let's ask this: eugenics, right? Let's kill a bunch of people so that the rest of us can
have a better gene pool.
Yeah, live better, right? So
eugenics is just limiting for the gene pool.
Look, sometimes I'm on Thanos' side, okay? We are very overpopulated. There's a lot of problems. If you could have a random lottery and get rid of like half the planet, do we need it? Yeah.
Is it good? No.
Is it ethical? Is it good? No, I don't know.
Daniel was talking about how the ancient Romans did amputations, and Julie says, how long has trepanning been going on? For a really long time. Trepanation has been a thing forever, and it's interesting because it's when they drill holes into your head. But they used to do it for like weird
headaches,
booga booga reasons. But no, now they do it and like it's a good thing. They use it in brain injuries or
to relieve pressure.
Yeah, like trepanning is one of the few things that we used to do for crazy reasons that has some real scientific validity.
I find it nuts how many things we used to do that were accidentally good. That we were
accidentally
using
good. Like leeches. Turns out you should use leeches on people. Like if you reattach a limb, leeches can actually.
What the fuck are you talking about?
If you cut off, like, okay, let's say someone's arm is cut off in an accident, and you reattach it, and you notice it's not getting proper blood flow. If you attach a bunch of leeches to their hand, the blood flow will be restored because they have anticoagulants in their saliva. Now, back in the day, they used to leave people with leeches. Nonsense reasons. But turns out leeches have medical potential.
It's fucking nuts.
Just saying.
It's just that, but it's like, okay, let's, like, lobotomies. Like when, like, I'm just, okay, so...
Or electroconvulsive therapy, something we've been doing for a really long time that actually has
back when they were
medical
doing
efficacy.
it, they were just zapping everybody and making them brain dead or whatever. But it turns out that like even in the treatment of just like depression, it's not called electroshock therapy anymore.
ECT, it's electroconvulsive therapy.
Right, yeah, and they're not putting like 120 volts through your brain anymore. They're doing these very light pulses,
and they put you to sleep now instead of doing it.
And what they're doing is they're kind of like rebooting the system, as opposed to like trying to fry out the bad part. It's kind of because your brain is just synapses and electrical impulses, and that's kind of the thought process behind some of the magnet therapy that they're trying to do, which I think that's a little goofy.
Oh, now they're talking about maggots. Yeah, you use those to clean wounds.
In a pinch, but I would.
They use them in hospitals.
I'd much rather use alcohol.
No, they use them in hospitals because there's
disgusting.
There's some tissue you can't get to; it's too deep. You'd have to cut out. Like sometimes, so let's say you have a septic.
What happens when it turns into flies?
No, do you remember when I had the leg hole?
I try not to think about it.
So let's say that had rotted.
Did your leg hole have an event horizon?
Let's say that like the tissue in that had been rotting. Now the surgical cure for that is cutting off my leg, but in some cases they could have added maggots, and now these are different maggots. They're not like gross flies. They breathe them in a lab, so they're clean.
Oh yeah.
And they kill them before they can become flies. They wash them out.
Oh okay.
Oh my god, I'm pretty sure you'd prefer maggots to having your leg cut off.
No, probably not.
Dude, I would.
They're like, you want some maggots in
your?
You want maggots in your leg, or you want me to cut it off? Man, you take that fucking leg. But I want it back in a plastic baggie so I can make some street tacos out of it. And
now, I'm not sure about magnets to fix your brain. The ECT I can see. Yeah, see, Daniel, I tried to tell them they remove them before they come. They don't just let flies fly out of your leg hole.
I'm just going to have nightmares about maggots in my leg now.
Dude, I've seen some gross things working at JPS.
My God.
Like maggots that weren't put in on purpose.
Oh, my God. It's just... I remember digging through the trash one time, and I was looking for something. Maybe it was my retainer. I don't know. And it just like maggots in my hand. And I just went up 4 octaves.
Is it genetic memory that we find those disgusting?
I don't know. I hate maggots. And anytime I'm in a restaurant where like a fly
landed on anything,
has landed, I'm not so much worried about the fly. I mean, they carry fucking diseases too. Like they're fucking walking around or whatever. But that's inconsequential.
Or they're gonna lay eggs on your food.
No, I'm thinking if there's flies in here,
there has to have been maggots at some point.
There's fucking maggots in the meat, because that's where flies come from. They spontaneously combust out of maggot meat.
Oh, that was the whole thing about. Oh no, I'm getting totally off topic.
Go ahead. We haven't been on topic in an hour.
That's the source of the idea that life can be spontaneous. Is they had this meat and they just left it out, and maggots appeared in the meat, and they're like, oh, life's spontaneous. It just happens. So then they put it in a.
It's so nuts because that stayed around until like the 60s.
Yeah.
Like the fucking 60s. Like that's not
until
that
they
long
put it
ago.
in a container and they put a bent straw on top so that the flies couldn't get to it, and they're like, oh, never mind, no maggots are popping up on this
it was
meat.
just laying these microscopic eggs. Go figure. Life will find a way.
I don't think very long. We were talking about Annalise Michaels, the exorcism of Emily Rose case. people who spontaneously learn a language from a head injury, if that could be related to exorcisms where someone has been maybe speaking Latin.
Right, yeah. So...
Why is it always Latin?
I think that because it's the most common.
It sounds creepy because it sounds creepy.
Well, it's also the root language of like 15
every
other,
language
for like 15 other languages. Yeah, more than 15. How far back was that?
I told you we were learning about the Annalise Michael thing. Oh,
okay, but no, yeah, that's also what the I lost the word. Savant.
The savants.
The savant thing. Yeah, that argument also is one of the scientific and psychological arguments for possession, because one of the main hallmarks of possession is they were speaking a language or had some kind of knowledge that they couldn't possibly have before. But
your mother sucks cocks in hell. Sorry, that's
that's knowledge a 12-year-old definitely wouldn't have. Yeah. But there's so many cases. There's an alarming number of cases of people that have had TBIs or some kind of traumatic, not even a TBI, but just a traumatic emotional experience or something like that. And then all of a sudden a switch flips and they just have this knowledge that they didn't have before. Well, where does that come from?
It was in your brain the whole time.
Well, and the main running theory is that you've picked up on it subconsciously. Like, you've been exposed to enough information that, like, somehow your brain's able to process. But some of that seems, like, really far-fetched. Someone
had a TBI and woke up able to play piano at, like, a level that...
musical instruments... Like music, the music prodigy thing makes sense to me, because when you break that down to its core, it's just math, and everybody's heard notes and scales, like can hear pitch, so it could just activate the part of your brain that's like, oh, this is a mathematical problem, and you just suddenly learn relative pitch out of nowhere. Which I wish I could just learn relative pitch out of nowhere. I would be an amazing musician, but I can't differentiate it that fast where I know something is, it's like 1.3 octaves above this other noise, or relative to where C is at. This is what E and E minor sounds like, and things like that. That makes sense to me, because music is a universal language. We all use the same notes, and it's all pitch and frequency, same scale, but we don't all use the same words. And we don't all use the same alphabet. Like, we're not all speaking the same language there. So, like, that particular case, and where people suddenly have skills that they shouldn't have, that they didn't have prior. Like, I can't even think of a good example. Like, where all of a sudden they can, like, build airplanes or whatever. What are you laughing at?
Nothing. We were talking about sucking things in hell.
Are you talking to them, or are you talking to me? What's going on?
Them.
But the savant thing, I had never pieced that together with, like, as a part of genetic memory where you're just activating that part of it. And I also thought about, like, the other side of savantism, where it doesn't come on just suddenly, where they're always a savant, like somebody who's got autism or something like that, and they're just really good. And, like, I think, like,
your mommy said you're an amazing magician. Just musician.
Magician? I am
a musician. You're a musician. No, you're a crappy magician.
I'm a great magician.
Okay.
I am.
Okay, I'm sure your mommy thinks so.
Man, fuck you. No one likes you.
You doing a lot of piercings? Because that's what Allie does.
Yeah.
If you want a tattoo, go.
Yeah, man-made tattoos in Stephenville, Texas. They do all kinds of piercings
and tattoos, and they have haunted stuff.
Oh yeah, we got it's down there. We got a pendulum from Allie.
Yeah, Brad's been playing with the pendulum Allie loaned us. Because we were talking about that on the last podcast.
Yeah, with Jared. He was like, she definitely wasn't moving her hand, but it was going, like, back and forth.
I can see you moving your hand.
Yeah, I can see me moving my hand, too. I haven't practiced enough, like Becky.
Daniel says after the accident that caused his TBI, he was able to sing much better. It's weird how that works.
Or maybe you just think you sing much better.
Yeah, is that the whole, if I do karaoke when I'm drunk, I think I'm okay at it? Is it because I'm drunk?
Yes.
Yes, I know.
It's absolutely because you're drunk. It's also because we're drunk.
Everyone's clapping.
Perception.
Everyone's drunk.
I love karaoke night. And it also came with this great... I didn't even notice this till today when I pulled this out of the package, but it's got like the...
the little Ouija board thing on it?
Yeah, that's going to be great.
I'm telling you, if it does that and it's hovering over that and it just like goes to one of them and it stays, then I'll believe in it.
I'm done. Yeah. I'll believe in anything at that point if it does that. If it just goes erect.
Because you like erect things.
That reminds me, I had a weird dream last night.
Was it genetic memory or perhaps deja vu?
No, but suddenly I said erect, and it just reminded me about the dream I had last night. I was doing stand-up on stage, and for some reason I like went off script, like I wasn't doing my material anymore, and I only had like a minute to tell a joke that made everybody happy, and it had something to do with about I was like. I don't know why I'm working my material out on this show. No, but I had this like dream that I was like, okay, I just got to tell a joke real quick. So I made up some stupid story about like, well, when I was a kid, I took some medicine or something, and it was too much. And everybody's like, oh, did it make you sick? And I was like, no, but it made me really erect. And everybody was just like so happy. It was a funny joke. It had something to do with accidentally taking Viagra. But it's so vague. Like, I don't remember my dreams like you do. Like I can remember it like happening and how I felt, and I was like, that joke landed, that was awesome. And then like the rest of the dream was I went and talked to the manager, and they were like, yeah, we'll give you like 45 minutes. That was awesome. And I was like, oh shit, now I have to come up with something funny because I just made that up right then and there.
Oh, but yeah, Always says they sell occult items. They don't sell haunted items, but she has a few you can look at.
I'll tell you what's fucking haunted.
But yeah, she works at man-made tattoos.
I'll tell you what is I don't like. And that's that stupid clown picture that y'all put
in your closet.
In my closet, because ever since I got that, my life has just gone downhill. I'm gonna have to do an exorcism on
the
it.
haunted clown picture. Yeah. So at Brad's birthday party a few weeks ago, Allie and Ryan, they have this house that they like bought on this property, and it's like old abandoned, and they found this clown picture.
And there's like there's just tons of stuff, tons.
Yeah, she found a meth pipe a few weeks ago.
I know. I bought it.
Really?
No.
Start your career as a meth head? Most of the haunted items are at home, she says. Yeah, they've got really cool stuff. Anyway.
But yeah, for my birthday, they just snuck this clown picture. And I also got 8mm porn, too. That was haunting.
The 70s porn?
Yeah.
Was that when 8mm was a thing? The 70s?
I don't know. But the whole memory thing, the way it ties into the paranormal stuff with me. I mean, not just deja vu, but just the way memory works in general. Because it seems like anytime anybody's having some kind of paranormal experience, or said, it all ties back into how they remember having that experience. Mm-hmm. And memory is the most unreliable indicator of anything because, It's not like a record keeping thing. It's tying in the emotions you had. They've even done some research into when they did this big study and they asked a bunch of people about their memories of 9/11, and the first thing out of most of their mouths were I remember I was in this place. Like, and
they found out like 50% of the memories were faulty.
Yeah. After a year, memory recall is only at 50%. So even things you think you are remembering perfectly, you're not. It turns out it's impossible. But what they noticed is most people associate memories with place before anything else. And they did this study with
Well, that's
rats.
like JFK. If you ask your parents, where were you when JFK got shot, they'll remember.
Yeah, they'll remember where they were at, and they'll remember the gist of the memory. But it's likely they're getting all the details wrong, like completely wrong. But they did this really cool experiment with rats where they were running them through a maze, and they were able to trace location memory to certain cells. And so
I was watching that show with you.
Yeah.
What is that show called?
Explaining the mind.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Or the Mind Explained, or whatever, and they cover a different part of it. It's on Netflix right now. Emma Stone narrates it. It's pretty good. But they did this experiment with rats, and they like color coded the different neurons or whatever. And so when it ran through one part of the maze, one neuron would fire. When it ran through another part of the maze, another neuron would fire, and so on and so forth. And then when it got to the end, and they were looking at the rat thinking about it, basically, those different neurons would fire when it was like trying to do the different part of the maze. Mm-hmm. So your brain actually assigns memory according to like location and stuff. So that's probably why people feel a strong connection to a location being haunted as opposed to other types of phenomenon, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's always associated to memory, and memory is so faulty. That's why we can't take experience as proof. We can't even take, like, even when it's multiple people, like eyewitnesses. Mm-hmm. Like Jared was here, and he was talking about all of them sitting there, and like, it's a really cool story, and they probably all remember it that way because they've talked about it. Yeah. They've talked about it to each other where they think it happened that way. But, you know, there's probably some things they're misremembering. Maybe it wasn't as, and I'm not saying it wasn't, but maybe it wasn't as loud. Well, it's like we all went to Kyle and we all discussed it so that we all remembered it a certain way, but then looking back at the actual footage, it's not that way. Oh, yeah. I was so surprised how tainted my own memories of all those events were, going back and looking at the footage of it and figuring out, no, none of those experiences I had, like, some of those experiences didn't even happen. And it was just, even me as an objective investigator, like, observing it was completely unreliable. Like, that was my only job that night, was to observe mm-hmm. what was going on. But that's just to the fact of, that's why we do it the way we do, like with the cameras and the equipment and the documenting and the taking notes and stuff. That's why so take the part where we have to remember out of it. Yeah, because there's a lot of investigation groups that go in, like, with their crystals and stuff, and they're like, no, we know it was haunted because we did this thing, but they didn't document mm-hmm. anything that was going on. They didn't record everything that was going on. And then when they go back to recall what happened that night to kind of justify their case or whatever, it's all built on that sort of memory. But we know how faulty memory is, to the point that you can absolutely convince yourself something happened a certain way, and you're not even a liar. Like, I could be communicating something to you, and you go back and check the facts, and you'd be like, man, you're a bold-faced liar. You're lying about this. Really and it's like, man, I really remember it happening this way. And speaking in 9/11, when Jared was on here, I told my 9/11 story. And if you remember, the first thing I remember, sitting in first period, yeah, and we were watching it on TV. Because I remember sitting in typing class. But it's interesting because I was thinking about something that happened to me when I was a kid, and it turns out that didn't actually happen. It was a dream I had that I thought was real. Okay, sure. So my uncle had surgery not too long ago. And this is an appropriate dream, right? Yeah, no. This is about my uncle had a surgery not too long ago, and he said my aunt was talking about something he'd done after the surgery, and he made this statement. He said, well, I remember that happening, but I'm not sure if I remember it happening because you've told me it happened so many times, which I thought was interesting. Well, and there was this big thing that they did with kids, teenagers, and adults where they would try to plant false memories in their head. And what they were doing...
Satanic Panic?
No.
I know that's that preschool that they have the false memories implanted.
It's fucking awesome. It's part of the same study. That's one of the reasons they were probably studying it. But what they did is they got these adolescents in there, and then they would interview them, find out a little bit about them, and it was real innocuous or whatever. And they would come back about a month later and do another interview. But this time, what they would do is they would talk to them and ask them a bunch of questions about a crime they had committed in the past that they knew about. And, don't you remember when, you took the money from your mom? You were telling us about it last time you were here. And in 70% of the cases, the kids would they would not only admit to having done the thing that they had never done, mm-hmm. but they would have memories about details. Like basically the false confession thing.
Yeah.
Like they would be like, well, yeah, I remember taking the money from my mom's safe. I remember I had to get the password to it by doing this, and they're like, what? What are you talking about?
So,
and it's real interesting how your brain can be manipulated into thinking it's had an experience that may have, not only could you misinterpret an experience that's happening as something else, but you could remember having an experience that never even happened to begin with.
Yeah, so when I was 5, okay, my grandma brings this story up every time I'm with her. When I was 5, I lived with her, and she had this little shelf that was it would have been above my head when I was 5. And I wanted the tweezers off the shelf. So I went and I said, Grandma, can I get the tweezers? And she said, yes. So I remember climbing up on a chair, going to get the tweezers out of the dish they were in, but I decided not to get them. And I thought, I said, I'll go watch cartoons or something else instead. That night, the tweezers went missing. And I kept going, Grandma, 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 I didn't steal them. I almost got a spanking over this. And every meal I have with her to this day, she goes, hey, you remember that time you stole the tweezers, then lie about it? And all this talk about memory, I've started to wonder, did I take them?
And forget
that I took them?
Well, you might have absent-mindedly done something it's almost like, so your
it's just so clearly what I remember is obviously not what everyone else remembers, because Kristen's talking about how her and her brothers grew up in the same environment, but they remember it very different ways.
Yeah, she's talking about the greenhouse, which is in the book, and she's got these really horrifying stories of that thing, mm-hmm. And from some of the times I've talked to her, her brothers don't have any recollection of any of that stuff happening. Or one of her brothers doesn't, and then one of them's like, well, it wasn't as bad as what you say. Or
Amelia says, or is that the Mandela effect, and your memory is correct, you just shifted your realities.
There's a lot of people that make an argument for that. So going back to so I do believe in parallel reality, or parallel universes. But really, what I believe in is more of adjacent dimensions, universes is what it is. And the reason I don't think parallel universes can exist in the way that would create these deja vu sort of scenarios where it's just slightly divergent or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's all because of butterfly effects. So,
weren't we talking about this at your party, where alternate universes would have to be drastically different?
Every universe, in my head, every universe would have to be drastically different, because it would have to be identical up to a certain point at which it diverged. But even the slightest divergence would suddenly cause something to be...
But I don't think that's true, because I just don't.
Well, you would have... The only way that couldn't be true is if time was somehow self-correcting. You would almost have to be kind of a fatalist, right? So, but just... Okay, so take a big event. What if...
Everyone's favorite reimagining of history is that Hitler won World War II.
Right.
You got Man in the High Castle and everything else, that it's always Germany won. But they always end up, we have the same technology we would now. Things are pretty much the same, except for Germany runs it, which to me sounds a little insane. Okay,
so maybe the outcome would be the same, but all the people would be different. That would be my point. You have too many deaths, divergent.
You wouldn't even probably exist in the...
Right? Yeah, it would be it would probably be the same technology. There would be constants. So technology is always going to progress at a certain rate.
That's not true.
In a certain direction, maybe. Well, we only have a finite
because in
amount
other countries
of
it doesn't. So if you take away our ability to do these things, then maybe technology doesn't progress.
Yeah, like I imagine every other dimension is just this like big flaming wasteland.
There's got to be a dimension where we're somewhere still freaking, in the
but
banging on things with rocks and not able to make fire.
I think we would have just starved out. We would have just died out. I mean, it's probably like this utopia of like nature. Dinosaurs are still around or whatever. But I mean, any one missing event causes a chain reaction. So you're not going to have you're never going to have a slightly diverged dimension in my head.
In your opinion.
But also, the other reason I think that is because I don't think dimensions overlap. So when people think of dimensions overlapping, they're thinking of a Venn diagram where it's like almost all
the
completely
exact same.
But I don't think they exist. You can't have
they
two
don't
things.
Overlap.
Yeah, they can't be in the same space at the same time. So what you have is basically like bubbles.
You have a Venn diagram, just they don't touch.
Yeah, well, they do touch it. It's more like so. If
just on the very corner.
If you take two soap bubbles and you put them together, they stick together and they make like that flat spot in between. They cluster up, and they're really all kind of one bubble, but they're divided. But if you get down to the physics of it and you start looking at how that is, the air in bubble A affects the air in bubble B, and that's where you get these like weird gravity waves and pockets and stuff like that, and that's where you would kind of get the signatures of dark matter, which we can't quite prove yet because we can see these spots in our universe where it's like, well, why is there gravity there? There's no mass there to create gravity, things like that. And so that could be evidence that, okay, that's where we kind of touch another dimension or whatever, but it could be drastically different. It's not necessarily overlapping, they're just touching each other. But the other really scary aspect of that is if it functions like a soap bubble, basically, if you get enough of them together, eventually they
turn into one.
Yeah, and then they just throw up on each other, and that's when stuff gets really scary. So you could just be driving down the street one day, and if all of a sudden that dividing wall between the two dimensions just kind of breaks down, you could have dinosaurs raining out of the sky, and Hitler just appears in your side seat, and you're like, oh shit, I knew this would happen, and then ghosts.
And Kristen says, what if we're in a simulation and Deja Vu is a bug?
Yeah, that's the other one that I hadn't touched on yet, is like it could just... That actually makes the most sense out of all this wacky garbage, is that, oh, this is just a simulated universe, and we're all just kind of like plugged into this thing. And every time you're having deja vu or whatever, it's just like a little reboot or just like a little glitch.
So I didn't like the Matrix movies, like with Keanu Reeves, but I really like the one cartoon where they find the house that's like the squishy spot in the Matrix.
The Animatrix, yeah.
And they find the house and they
it's
just
got
like
ghosts in it,
and they like throw a Coke bottle and it just hovers in the air.
Yeah,
that was always my favorite.
It's just the part where the code's like all effed up, and somebody hadn't fixed it yet, and it's all screwed up. But they explain that in the movies too. They're like vampires, ghosts, all these things you hear of. These are just pieces. These are just holdovers from the last version of the Matrix where it didn't work or whatever. But the code keeps popping up. Yeah. I don't know. It sounds so stupid, the whole simulation theory thing, but the more I hear it, the more I'm just like, I kind of hope that's true. But that's also scary. That's also a really scary thought too.
Why?
Well, it's not the simulation part that scares me. It's that if
it can be turned off.
Yeah. If the universe is just like organic or whatever, you can't destroy data. You can't really completely destroy matter, right? So everything just, like, even at the end of the universe, really, it just kind of like collapses or whatever. But it's kind of like a cycle or whatever. Well, for a simulation, what if somebody trips over the fucking power cord? Like if we're in a computer, there's any number of accidents that could just... Think of the last time you were playing World of Warcraft.
The computer goes dark and the guy's like, I didn't save!
Yeah.
I didn't save!
It's just like, oh shit. You know what deja vu is? That's where somebody died or something, and they're just going back to a save point.
Yeah, you got rebooted.
And you're like, wait a minute. And the guy walks through again. You're like, you've already been through here. I already talked to you. He's like, yeah, I know. I'm checking out the other the other conversation tree.
Nerd.
I don't know. These are the things that keep me up at night. Really, truly. Not really. I think about work a lot. It stresses me out, but I've learned a lot more. I watched that documentary, and I did some reading recently, and I learned a lot more about how the brain works, and the Deja Vu thing was really interesting to me. What are your thoughts? Like out of all,
Steven says if the simulation stopped, we wouldn't notice, so it's okay.
That is true, but I have anxiety, so I'm going to think about it the whole time until it happens. So of all the medical theories or thoughts out there, what's the one you think is the most plausible, the most likely in your head? Is
memory's just faulty?
Well, besides it just being faulty, like you don't think there's a trigger. You think it's the short circuit between the long-term and short-term memory, or do you think
it's probably a short circuit somewhere in the brain? I'm not sure if that's exactly where it is, but.
Or do you think it's just a natural way that memory works, where sometimes you just remember things weird?
It might be a short circuit, and also you just remember things weird.
Okay, so you think all of the above is right? You don't
probably in part.
You don't think there's a smoking gun for what causes deja vu? Okay, well, I mean, that's fair
with
enough.
most body things, it's always a lot of factors. It's very seldom one thing.
In your research, did you see anything... were there any environmental factors that increase the amount of deja vu, anything like that?
No. Health issues, but not environmental factors.
When I was on, and I can't remember the name of the drug, but when I was on Reddit, I did see that there were a couple of drugs that people were saying one of the side effects was frequent deja vu.
I wouldn't call that an environmental factor. I would call that a medical. I don't know. I guess if that's what you're saying, then yeah, the people have reported that benzos, for one, can cause deja vu.
I didn't know that. I didn't see that one. Maybe that's what they were talking about, because I don't remember what the drug was. But I mean, environmental factors, like there's like a chemical or something, an outside factor
I'm sure there's
besides
medicines
just a
you
faulty
can take.
Body. It'd be really weird to take something and get that. Would hallucinogenics do that? I would imagine some like mushrooms or whatever could possibly cause that sort of feeling or whatever, because it causes a lot of people to get that like openness, like, oh, I'm one with the world and I now see reality for what it is or whatever, so why wouldn't it also affect your sort of perception of time and things like that? But I don't know, you got any more thoughts on it? I really we're in a really bad game of The Sims. Yeah, the graphics suck. I wake up every day and I'm just like, man, these graphics.
I hope we're not The Sims, because everyone's favorite thing to do is have someone climb into the ladder or pool and then pull the ladder. So
I haven't played The Sims in so long, and you downloaded it on my Xbox the other day. I need to play that. I like all the people. They just make like a whorehouse. Like they just put like one dude and like 1,000 girls in there and just make them breed.
Good God.
They just kill off all the men. All the boy babies, just to make them keep inbreeding over and over. It's horrible.
I've never done that on this.
I think I'm the only one that does that.
Yeah, you're a sick fuck.
Okay, so they're in a simulation. What if they have consciousness just like us?
Well, someone asked me that. Like, what if you were playing The Sims and one of them turned around and went, "What are you doing? Why is this happening?" Yeah, I'd freak out.
Like, all of a sudden, they just become self-aware. Like, that would be my worst nightmare.
I'm so sorry. I drowned so many of your friends.
Like, sometimes when I'm writing books, I'm like, what if my character suddenly becomes self-aware or whatever? I kind of wanted to write a book that way, where he becomes self-aware of the fact that I'm telling a story about him.
There's a book like that. Isn't it like Stranger Than Fiction or something?
Yeah, but that's more... I think I would write it a bit... I think my version of it would get fucking horrifying. Because he'd just go like off the deep end, maybe. I don't know. Let's see. You have some events coming up in October. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to be doing you have to pay to go, and they'll have like a ghost hunt every Friday and Saturday at Needful Things. That's an antique store in Granbury. We're going to screen the episode that we did about Needful Things. We're going to hand out some pizza, and then we're going to hand out some equipment and let people do ghost hunts.
Yeah, and you're going to do a little class about how to use...
I'm going to show them how to use everything.
Yeah. And the groups are limited to 4
people.
I think it's $200 a person, which that's a little higher than some of the other stuff we did, but it's really cool though because you're in just a group of 4 and you have like all access to the place. Like
I figure
it's
for that much money too, I'll let people stay later if they want to stay later. Like I'm not going to put an end time specifically on it.
Yeah. Oh, I think she's got it set for 4 a.m.
Yeah, something like that. But I doubt most people are going to want to stay till 4, but I will if people want to stay.
Well, yeah. But unlike like the big tours where, you know, everybody's just walking around over each other, it'll be like a real investigation because it'll be you and 4 people and you'll have
maybe someone helping me, but
yeah, from our group. But that's just a group of 6 people. That's
at the most.
That's a paranormal team, and so you'll actually be able to run them through some real paranormal investigation. Plus, there's dinner, there's a movie, there's a class. Sounds really cool.
Oh, you can't afford for Savannah to go. Well, maybe if I don't have anyone else to help one night, she can go help me. Because I was going to take Caitlin to help me one night, so maybe Savannah could do that too. I'll make sure that's okay with the person who owns the store. But
October 11th, you guys can catch at least me. If Sarah doesn't have anything booked that night, she'll be there too, I think. But I'll be at Farmers Branch doing a presentation down there and a ghost walk through Farmers Branch Park. They got a lot of historical area over there and a bunch of really cool stories. We're doing that. This weekend is actually the Spooky Spectacle in downtown Fort Worth. I wish I could go. I got stuck working 6 days a week, so I can't do it.
And I'm super busy this month, so
yeah. But I know Brandy's got that running. She's got like 500 freaking vendors down there.
And that used to be the Granbury Paranormal Convention, but they moved it to Fort Worth because so many people were coming.
Yeah, it's huge. I saw her posting some pictures of it earlier. And then we got some other really cool stuff just kind of in the works planned. And I was really hoping to announce that it was live tonight. It's not. I looked. Amazon is dragging their butt. But our episode 2 about Yoakum Hospital, it's going to be live on Amazon sometime really soon. I hope. It was supposed to be live this week, but their review process just takes a while. And so it hasn't updated on the server, but really soon that's going to hit. And right about the same time that hits, our pilot episode actually got a director's cut. It got revamped to match up with episode 2 because that first episode we put out was kind of like the test episode to see what the market was. And then after that happened, like it's been recut. It's actually got more evidence in it. It's streamlined a little bit better, so it's more entertaining for us better.
So there isn't any paranormal convention in Granbury this year? I always ask him.
No.
They moved it to Fort Worth.
Yeah, not in Granbury. Oh, interesting info I got for 2020, though. The Tyler Paracon
is back,
and we will be part of it.
Cool.
We got invited to go out and be speakers. We're going to have a booth like we did before, and we're going to be hosting the paranormal tour or basically the ghost hunt at one of the locations. And I haven't been confirmed which one it is, but I'm going to really try to get us in the Mineola Theater.
Okay.
Because he always does that one. But I mean, they always have like 15 freaking
different locations
for people to go do. And, you know, I like hosting. Like, I had a good time hosting it at the theater, but I'm always kind of down because, like, we can't go to the other locations because we're busy. So that's why I'm going to tell them, hey, just give us a different location this time, and then, you know, every year we'll do it.
We can cycle through.
Yeah, and then we'll eventually get to do all of them. But I've always really liked the Tyler Paracon.
Yeah, I do too.
And Spooky Spectacle looks like it's gonna be really good. They got the guy that played Kincaid from Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4. You know, the strong dude. And then they got the kid from Child's Play. No. It's not the kid from Child's Play. It's the kid from, he played Gage.
Oh, Pet Sematary.
Yeah, the original one. He's like all grown up.
Oh, really? I want to go see him. I love that movie.
Yeah, he just came in town tonight, but yeah, he's there. They got a bunch of stuff going on. So anyway, and the last thing before I cut out. So we are I don't know when we're going to start it, but we are going to go to a premium style podcast where you can pay.
We're still doing this.
Yeah. It'll still be free. You can still watch it on Facebook, and it's going to be free, and you can still get it on iTunes, and it'll be free. But it's going to have some commercials in it, and we'll try to make them not too intrusive and annoying. But if
we should make our own funny commercials.
They're going to be our commercials, and somebody wants to buy some ad space from me for their podcast, so I'm going to put that in there. But there's probably going to be 2 commercial breaks in the middle of every hour or whatever. But we're going to offer a premium plan where you can watch the whole thing completely uninterrupted, no commercials, and also you'll get some like bonus podcasts and bonus material and things like that. So we're going to go to that probably in the next, I don't know, couple of months, something like that. Maybe as we go into 2020, we'll get that started. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, we're going to have like some ads about our book and the TV show. And then Sam wanted to buy some space from me to do that. So we'll be a funded podcast because people will be buying advertiser space. So it'll be interesting. So any final thoughts?
No.
Anything? Just completely empty?
Yeah.
How do you ever have deja vu? Because you never have anything
I've had a
up
long week. I'm going to go back to doing that after this podcast.
All right. Everybody have a good night and be careful and safe out there. Don't break into places. And if you have deja vu
If you
have deja vu more than like 5-6 times in a month, you should probably go see a doctor.
Crimes.
Oh my God. Bye.